The Senate will come to order. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa Nueces, Hinojosa Hidalgo, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, King, Colcourse, Menendez, Middleton, Miles, Nichols, Parker, Paxton, Perry, Schwartner, Sparks, West, Zaffarini.
A quorum is present. For those in the gallery, please rise for the invocation to be delivered by Father Jesse Martinez, Santa Cruz Catholic Church in Buda, Texas.
Let us pray. O God, our help in every age and our hope in years to come, look with kindness on the deliberations of this government. May the work of this body strive for the preservation of peace, the promotion of happiness, the increase of industry, and may perpetuate to us the blessing of equal liberty. May those who protect and serve be delivered from danger. May the vulnerable find protection under the law, and may every citizen of our state, in obedience to that law, unite in peace. May all gathered here discharge the duties of their respective stations with honesty and ability. Aided by your providential care, may every work of ours begin with you, and through you find its completion. Amen.
Thank you, Father Martinez. You may be seated in the gallery. Chair recognizes Senator Colcourse.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say about Father Martinez, he was born in Senate District 18, graduated from Caldwell High School, and we just had a great visit. And one of our good Catholics right there, Senator Betancourt's taking a picture with him. But Father Martinez, there was Senator Betancourt. Welcome to the Texas Senate. And when we were talking, you talked about going to high school, growing up in Caldwell, Texas, and you just went into the priesthood because you wanted to shepherd people from their birth all the way to when they meet their Maker, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And thank you, and what a blessing. And just feel honored that you grew up just down the road from me. Thank you.
The Dean of the Senate moves to excuse Senator Miles on account of important business in the district. Is there objection? The chair hears none. Motion's adopted. The Dean of the Senate moves to dispense with the reading of yesterday's journal. Is there objection? Hearing none. Motion's adopted. The following message from the governor. The secretary will read the message.
To the Senate of the 89th Legislature, regular session, I ask the advice, consent, and confirmation of the Senate with respect to the following appointments. To be the Austin County Criminal District Attorney, Brandy N. Robinson Seeley. To be members of the Texas Tech University System Board of Regents, Douglas M. Doug McRegan, Friendswood, Donald R. Don Sinclair, Houston, Dusty R. Dusty Womble, Lubbock, Respectfully submitted, Greg Abbott, Governor of Texas, to nominations.
Members, if there's no objection, I'd like to postpone the reading and the referral of bills and resolutions until the end of today's calendar. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The following motion in writing, the Secretary will read the motion.
Motion in writing. Mr. President, I move to suspend Senate Rule 11.13 so that committees may meet during the reading and referral of bills. Motion by Zaffarini.
Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is adopted. The following motion in writing, the Secretary will read the motion.
Motion in writing. Mr. President, I move suspension of Senate Rule 5.14, the intent calendar rule, in order to move the intent calendar deadline to 4 p.m. today. Motion by Zaffarini.
Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is adopted. Chair lays out the following resolutions. The Secretary will read the resolutions.
SR 228 by Creighton, SR 297 by Perry, SR 298 by Nichols, SR 299 by Campbell, SR 301 by Campbell, SR 309 by Eckhart.
Members, this is a voice vote. All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The resolutions are adopted. Chair recognizes Senator Eckhart to introduce the Doctor of the Day.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you, members. I am excited to be joined this morning by Dr. Georgianne Freeman. Dr. Freeman is a native Texan born in Houston, now living in Austin. Everyone gets here as quickly as they can, right? She's a friend of Travis County who has served on the County Medical Society's Public Health Committee, combating viruses we've encountered here over the last 13 years. Dr. Freeman completed their master's in public health at East Tennessee State University, going on to complete osteopathic medical school in Des Moines, Iowa, with a later residency at the University of Washington in Seattle. While in Washington, she made house calls on horseback for chickens on the dollar as a rural doctor for over 8 years through the National Health Service Corps Scholarship. Known around these parts as the downtown doctor, Dr. Freeman opened her clinic just 2 miles from the Capitol here in Austin in 2009. At her clinic, she provides inclusive health care for all people, regardless of age or gender, specializing in reverse aging for women over 40, providing contraception, and along with evidence-based care and support for transgender Texans. She also enjoys teaching a rotation of rising medical professionals in osteopathic medicine at her clinic, along with taking time off to take a few laps at Deep Eddy Pool, another cool respite in the hot city. Thank you, Dr. Freeman, for lending your time and your care to the legislature today. And members, please join me in welcoming Dr. Freeman to the chamber.
Chair recognizes Senator Campbell for recognition.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I would like anybody from the Texas Telephone Association that's in the gallery to please stand. Texas, and what a representative group you all are. Members, the Texas Telephone Association that are seated in the gallery are celebrating Texas Rural Broadband Day today. Actually, do I have any from GVTC and the Hill Country Telephone with us? Raise your hand if you are. If not, yes. Hill Country Telephone Co-op. Okay, sorry about that. Well, it's good to see all of you. You represent us as constituents. You represent all of the members across the state. I want you to know you're welcomed. We're happy to celebrate this Broadband Day with you. We've put a lot of dollars to get broadband out to the rural counties. It's very important that nobody is disenfranchised and they have access. So members, help me recognize and welcome the Texas Rural the Texas Telephone Association. I will get that straight. Texas Telephone Association members, thank you so much and welcome.
Members, that concludes the morning call. Senator Hinojosa of Hidalgo is recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 427.
Thank you, Mr. President, members. Senate Bill 427 is relating to the eligibility of certain political subdivisions to receive state loan or grant following the political subdivision's failure to comply with state statutes on financial reporting requirements. Currently,
Members, could we have a little order while the senator lays out his bill? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under current law, it's required that political subdivisions file or publish their annual financial statements. This is a state statute. These statements are crucial to maintaining public trust, ensuring fiscal responsibility, and making decisions about the allocation of state resources. However, when these entities fail to meet their financial reporting obligations, it really underestimates and undermines public confidence and hinders effective oversight by the state. Senate Bill 427 seeks to address this issue by linking eligibility for state loans or grants to compliance with these reporting requirements that are under present state statutes. Specifically, political subdivisions that fail to file or publish their reports are required to not be eligible to receive a state loan or grant for the fiscal year in which the failure occurred. This ensures that only political subdivisions that meet state-mandated financial reporting obligations are eligible for state financial assistance. Senate Bill 427 also specifies that each application for a state program must include a statement notifying the applicant of this requirement and require the political subdivision to demonstrate compliance in the manner prescribed by the state agency administering the loan or grant. There is an exception for non-compliance due to a declared disaster. This ensures the political subdivisions affected by disasters are not penalized. With that, Mr. President, members, I move to suspend the regular order of business.
Senator Hinojosa moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 427. Is there objection? Hearing none, the rules are suspended. The chair lays out on second reading committee substitute for Senate Bill 427. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 427 relating to the eligibility of certain political subdivisions to receive a state loan or grant following the political subdivision's failure to comply with certain financial reporting requirements.
Senator Hinojosa, you're recognized for a motion.
I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Hinojosa moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Hinojosa, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
I so move, Mr. President.
Senator Hinojosa moves suspension of the 3-day rule. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The rules are suspended. The chair lays out on third reading and final passage of committee substitute for Senate Bill 427. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 427 relating to the eligibility of certain political subdivisions to receive a state loan or grant following the political subdivision's failure to comply with certain financial reporting requirements.
Senator Hinojosa, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move final passage of Senate Bill 427.
Senator Hinojosa moves final passage of committee substitute for Senate Bill 427. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook.
That'll be 30 ayes and 0 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Paxton is recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 402.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I move to suspend the regular order of business to take up and consider Senate Bill 402. In 2019, I carried Senate Bill 1856 to empower homeowners to be able to specify a particular address for their property tax refunds to be mailed, including third parties if they so desired. This bill was signed into law. Senate Bill 402 directs the comptroller to adopt a uniform request form that a person to whom a property tax refund is owed may use to request that the tax assessor or collector send the refund to a particular address. And it also requires that the tax assessor or collector must send it to that address as long as the person submits the written request using the comptroller's form before the date of the refund is issued. I move to suspend.
Senator Paxton moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 402. Is there objection? Hearing none, rules are suspended. The chair lays out second reading. Senate Bill 402. The secretary read the caption.
Senate Bill 402 relating to the payment of certain ad valorem tax refunds.
Senator Paxton, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Paxton moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Paxton, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Senator Paxton moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The rules are suspended. The chair lays out on third reading and final passage of Senate Bill 402. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 402 relating to the payment of certain ad valorem tax refunds.
Senator Paxton, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Senator Paxton moves final passage of Senate Bill 402. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Senator Kolkhorst is recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 400.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business and take up and consider at this time committee substitute to Senate Bill 400. Members, committee substitute to Senate Bill 400 is a refile of Senate Bill 595 from last session that passed this body 28-3. The intent of this bill is to ensure that parents are granted the opportunity to provide written consent to a school district prior to any psychological or psychiatric exam or test designed to elicit certain information about a child presented in the form of a survey, check-in, screening, or embedded in an academic lesson. Members, this bill actually came from Senate District 18. Feedback that I'd received from parents that students were being asked in different sessions, how do you feel today? That was being gathered and put on computers. We had no idea where that was going. And all of that was happening about their mental health status without parental consent. So members, this is a refile and is parents just opting in, and in no way stops the school district from doing surveys. It's just that parents have to be notified and actually opt into these. Certain bills have some of this in it, like Senate Bill 8, but I'm very pleased to present committee substitute to Senate Bill 400 in a way that, again, gives parents the option to opt in for any of these tests.
Senator Kolkhorst moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 400. Is there objection? There is objection. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook.
28 ayes and 2 nays. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading committee substitute for Senate Bill 400. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 400 relating to requiring parental consent for psychological or psychiatric examination, testing, or treatment.
Following amendment.
Floor Amendment Number 1 by Menendez.
Senator Menendez,
Thank you, Mr. President.
you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Members, last session when this very same bill was presented, I offered this very same amendment that's going to clarify that additional layers of parental consent may not be needed in a place where there is an immediate danger to the child or the parent is suspected of abuse or neglect themselves. Last session, this amendment was acceptable. I believe it is acceptable. I've spoken to Senator Kolkhorst. I want to thank her for doing this and making sure that, yes, we all support a parent's right and the necessity to be a part of any psychological evaluation or service for their child may be offered. And so, but I know this amendment maintains that spirit, and I believe it is acceptable to the author, and I move adoption of
Senator
floor amendment
Kolkhorst, you're
rule.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is acceptable, and restating what is in the family code and putting it right here with this bill and this part of the election code makes sense, so it is acceptable to the author.
Senator Hall, for what purpose?
Ask the question of the author.
Do you yield, Senator Kolkhorst?
Yes.
And under 2A, does this allow a child to make their own consent?
No, it does not. What this does, Senator Hall, is it just restates what's in the family code. So this gives the child the ability, if he or she has been abused or is in some way reaching out, that they can go to the counselor and tell them that. And that's not considered a part of a psychiatric test or a psychiatric treatment of any survey of any way. So it's really a restatement of the family code that's already existing.
So this is a child reporting abuse that they've experienced.
They reach out. That's right. They
and we're
reach
just saying
out.
this doesn't prevent that from happening.
That does not. No, it does not. It's not like the child can say, hey, I want to take this I'm happy today test or whatever. It does not. It is the child reaching out to report some kind of abuse. And so it's a restatement of what's already in the family code. And we actually have talked about this in the education committee because there were some concerns. And then, of course, 2B is the mandatory reporters. And so in working with Senator Menendez's office, restating it again in the education code because it already exists in the family code, I feel it's a redundancy, but it's just putting it right there tight so that everybody can know. We want a child, if they have been sexually abused or something, to be able to reach out to that counselor. Obviously, we don't want to stop that in any way. And again, it's already in the family code. We're just restating it here in this portion of the education code. But great question.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Not weakening the bill at all. This is, what we're doing here is just taking that part of the code and we're inserting it in the education code so that there's no confusion. Sometimes people look at a code and it's not there and they don't know to refer back to the family code. And so I feel like this is a very strong bill. But I'm glad you asked the question. And this doesn't, I wouldn't have accepted it if it weakened it at all. This is
I agree.
Very, very tight bill.
It feels like Yogi Berra, like we're deja vu all over again. Move adoption.
Members, is there any objection to adoption of floor amendment number 1? It is acceptable to the author. Hearing none, floor amendment is adopted. Senator Kolkhorst, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage of committee substitute to Senate Bill 400 to engrossment.
Senator Kolkhorst moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook.
28 ayes, 2 nays. The bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Kolkhorst, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you. So moved, Mr. President.
Senator Kolkhorst moves suspension of the 3-day rule. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook.
28 ayes and 2 nays. The rules are suspended. The chair lays out on third reading and final passage of committee substitute for Senate Bill 400. The Secretary read the caption.
Committee substitute, Senate Bill 400, relating to requiring parental consent for psychological or psychiatric examination, testing, or treatment conducted by a school district employee.
Senator Kolkhorst, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage of Senate Bill 400.
Senator Kolkhorst moves final passage of committee substitute for Senate Bill 400. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Bardwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton,
There be 28 ayes and 2 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Senator Nichols, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 1121.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business on Senate Bill 1121. Members, this bill seeks to eliminate redundant regulations for fiber broadband projects. The bill would add fiber broadband projects located in the right-of-way of a highway to an existing list of projects currently exempt from archaeological studies. The land in a right-of-way has already been disturbed by the road construction, and there is little, if any, chance to damage of an archaeological site. If something of historical significance is found during construction, providers are still obligated to notify the Historical Commission, and it actually is happening out there. They're having to do some of these. And with that, I move to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 1121.
Senator Nichols moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 1121. Hearing none, there's no objection. Hearing none, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 1121. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 1121 relating to accepting certain fiber optic cable projects from certain notice requirements for projects on state or local public land.
Senator Nichols, you're recognized for a motion.
I move passage and engrossment of Senate Bill 1121.
Senator Nichols moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Nichols, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
I move to suspend the 3-day rule.
Senator Nichols moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Bardwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The rules are suspended. The chair lays out on third reading and final passage of Senate Bill 1121. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 1121 relating to accepting certain fiber optic cable projects from certain notice requirements for projects on state or local public land.
Senator Nichols, you're recognized for a motion.
I move final passage of Senate Bill 1121.
Senator Nichols moves final passage of Senate Bill 1121. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Bardwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Perry, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 740.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Senate Bill 740 is intended to reduce the time it takes the PUC to process applications for system improvement charges by implementing a 60-day time limit that runs from the day the PUC receives a complete application. With that, I move to suspend the regular order of business to hear committee substitute 740.
Senator Perry moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 740. Is there objection? Hearing none, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading committee substitute for Senate Bill 740. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 740 relating to certain proceedings by the Public Utility Commission of Texas regarding water or sewer service.
Following amendment. Secretary, read the amendment.
Amendment number 1 by Perry.
Senator Perry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, the floor amendment simply just changes the effective date to represent September 1st, 2026.
Members, is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment number 1? Hearing none, the amendment is adopted. Following an amendment, Secretary, read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 2 by Colhorst.
Senator Colhorst, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President and members, and thank you, Senator Perry. Members, during the Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs hearing on Senate Bill 740, I expressed a desire to ensure that the consumer voices are heard in this process of adopting system improvement charges. It actually goes back to a case that I had in my own district where they'd seen 400% increases and then another increase on top of that. And the Office of Public Utility Counsel was absolutely instrumental in turning back some of those high costs. So my amendment will give a 30-day timeline for all parties to provide comment to the Public Utility Commission before a system improvement charge is considered administratively complete and the charge is allowed to go into effect. So this is just transparency and a little time for the consumers and our constituents. I think it's acceptable to the author.
Chair recognizes Senator Perry on the amendment.
Yes, it is acceptable to the author. It's formalizing what's already in practice. It's just putting in a statute. Thank you.
Member Senator Colhorst offers floor amendment number 2 is acceptable to the author. Is there any objection? Hearing none, floor amendment number 2 is adopted. Following amendment, Secretary, read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 3 by Hinojosa of Nueces.
Senator Hinojosa of Nueces, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment, floor amendment to SB 740, adds public utility agencies as a type of water system that is eligible for the expedited sale, transfer, merger process that SB 740 is authorizing. PUAs are governed under Chapter 572 of the Local Government Code, and unlike most other classes of water utilities, under Chapter 13 of the Water Code. And for that reason, their inclusion is overlooked, even though it makes sense to include them. Public utility agency model promotes regionalization, which is the key objective of this bill and a priority for the state in efforts to rebuild failing water systems. This amendment is, I believe this amendment is acceptable to the author.
Senator Perry, you're recognized on the amendment.
Members, acceptable to the author.
Senator Hinojosa of Nueces offers floor amendment number 3 is acceptable to the author. Is there any objection? Hearing none, amendment 3 is adopted. Senator Perry, you recognized for a motion.
Move committee substitute 740 to passage to engrossment.
Senator Perry moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Perry, you recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Move to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule. Committee substitute Senate Bill 740.
Senator Perry moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Bardwell, Blanco, Campbell.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The rules are suspended. The chair lays out on third reading and final passage of committee substitute for Senate Bill 740. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 740 relating to certain proceedings by the Public Utility Commission of Texas regarding water or sewer service.
Senator Perry, you recognized for a motion.
Move final passage.
Senator Perry moves final passage of committee substitute for Senate Bill 740. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Bardwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator. Senator Zaffarini, you recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 65.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business in order to take up and consider at this time Senate Bill 65 relating to the adoption of uniform rules for hours of work for certain county employees. Members, under current law, only counties with more than 355,000 residents have the authority to establish uniform business hours. Generally, Senate Bill 65 would lower that threshold for counties authorized to adopt uniform rules from 355,000 to 265,000. Mr. President, I move adoption.
Senator Zaffarini moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 65. Is there objection? Hearing none, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 65. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 65, relating to the adoption of uniform rules for hours of work for certain county employees.
Senator Zaffarini, you recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Zaffarini moves passage to engrossment. Is there any objection? Hearing none, bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Zaffarini, you recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the constitutional rule that bills be heard on 3 several days.
Senator Zaffarini moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton.
29 ayes and 1 nay. Rule is suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage of Senate Bill 65. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 65, relating to the adoption of uniform rules for hours of work for certain county employees.
Senator Zaffarini, you recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Senator Zaffarini moves final passage of Senate Bill 65. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagen.
29 ayes, 1 nay. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 893.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, the committee substitute to Senate Bill 893 is a slightly altered refile of a bill that we passed out of this chamber last session. We don't know why it didn't make it through the House, but this time it surely is. This is a bill that protects all candidates and our electoral processes from deep fake videos, deep fake audio, and deep fake images. What this bill does that's different from last time around is it adds audio and it adds images to the deep fake prohibitions. In addition, instead of the previous time limit that was in the bill, which was 30 days, now you get busted for using deep fake technology at any time that you do it with the intent to injure a candidate or alter an election. There's some discussion in committee about what a relevant time frame would be, but members, that would be the subject of the authorities that are going to have to prosecute these crimes. We did have testimony that this is a prosecutable crime and that it could assist law enforcement in actually preventing other crimes like the distribution of child pornography and things like that. So it is a bill that protects the electoral process, and I do have a floor amendment for the bill to make it even better.
Senator Johnson moves suspension on the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 893. Is there objection? Hearing none, the rules are suspended. The chair lays out on second reading committee substitute for Senate Bill 893. The secretary read the caption.
Committee substitute, Senate Bill 893, relating to criminal offenses for creating and distributing certain misleading images and videos.
There is an amendment. Secretary, read the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the amendment that I just referred to. It adds audio. This was at the suggestion of some observers of the process. If you are altering...
Senator Johnson, she needs to read it first, and then we'll go with all due respect.
Sorry, Mr. President, and sorry, Madam Secretary.
Secretary, read the caption.
Floor amendment number 1 by Johnson.
Senator Johnson, you are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you. This is the amendment that adds audio to the list of offenses. Previously, we had added images. We now have video, audio, and images. If you're using deepfake technology to injure a candidate or alter the outcome of an election, you are breaking the law when we pass this bill. Secondly, we wanted to address concerns that some members, some very legitimate concerns that members had, that such a law might be a way to go after people who are just poking fun, to attack the time-honored tradition of satire in this country, which we absolutely do not want to do. This amendment makes clear that the caricature exception, that if you're just doing something to state your opinion, you're ridiculing a candidate, you're making them have a goat's head or something, that's fine. It's only when you're trying to deceive the public that you're running afoul of this law. So this makes sure that you have that safe harbor, whether it's a video or an audio or an image. And the last thing that the amendment does is it adds injunctive relief. We all know that if somebody makes an injurious ad and it runs within 30 days of the election, it's not going to matter. So we got rid of that time limit. But in addition, at this point, you've got to be able to stop it. If they're going to run it and you have to go to the court system and litigate it for 2 years, the election is over. So if you violate this law, you are subject to an injunction from the courts to have to cease that behavior, cease that activity, and now the law is in better shape. Members, I move adoption.
Senator Johnson presents floor amendment number 1. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the amendment is adopted. Senator Johnson, you're recognized for a motion.
I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Johnson moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none, bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Johnson, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Senator Johnson moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage of Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 893. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee Substitute, Senate Bill 893, relating to criminal offenses for creating and distributing certain misleading images and videos.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized for a motion.
I move final passage of the committee substitute to Senate Bill 893 as amended here on the floor.
Senator Johnson moves final passage of committee substitute for Senate Bill 893. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator.
Mr. President, thank you, members.
Senator Parker, you are recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 1106.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider SB 1106. SB 1106 is a refile of SB 1916 from the last legislative session, which passed the Senate unanimously. Even when the service plan is properly filed with the county clerk, the information is not easily accessible by the public, including those who are required to provide the information in the sale of real property. SB 1106 requires the city or county who creates the PID to publish a copy of the service plan on their website. It requires the city or county who creates the PID to provide the property assessment roll and to the appraisal district where the property is located. And it requires the appraisal district to include PID information on the same transparency website where their property tax information is located and which is searchable by address. While PIDs are not a taxing jurisdiction, they do add costs for property owners, and many people think of those assessments as part of their annual tax bill. I believe providing transparency to property owners about their liability is a great expansion of the property tax transparency measures we've passed over the last few sessions. Mr. President, I move suspension.
Senator Parker moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 1106. Is there objection? Hearing none, the rules are suspended. The chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 1106. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 1106, relating to publication of public improvement district service plans and assessments on certain public internet websites.
Senator Parker, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Parker moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none, bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Parker, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the 3-day rule.
Senator Parker moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage of Senate Bill 1106. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 1106, relating to publication of public improvement district service plans and assessments on certain public internet websites.
Senator Parker, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move final passage.
Senator Parker moves final passage of Senate Bill 1106. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President, members.
Senator Menendez, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 1447.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business, take up and consider at this time Senate Bill 1447.
Senator Menendez moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 1447. Is there objection? Hearing none. Rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 1447. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 1447 relating to standards adopted by the Texas Education Agency regarding the use of electronic devices and software applications by public schools.
Senator Menendez, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage of Senate Bill 1447 to engrossment.
Senator Menendez moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none. Bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Menendez, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Mr. President, I move suspension of the 3-day rule.
Senator Menendez moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary, call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage of Senate Bill 1447. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 1447 relating to standards adopted by the Texas Education Agency regarding the use of electronic devices and software applications by public schools.
Senator Menendez, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I want to thank you for your efficient administration of this bill, and I move final passage of Senate Bill 1447.
Senator Menendez moves final passage of Senate Bill 1447. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Gray.
30 ayes, 0 nays. Congratulations, the bill is finally passed, Senator. It's a good bill, Senator. It's a good bill. Senator Huffman, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 535.
Oh, 535. Sorry, I had the wrong bill book out. Let me start over. Okay, got it. Thank you, Mr. President. Members, at this time, I move to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider the committee substitute to Senate Bill 535. Members, Texas's Rape Shield Law, Rule of Evidence 412, protects victims of sexual assault and aggravated sexual assault by generally excluding evidence of their past sexual behavior or reputation. However, this rule does not extend these protections to victims of human trafficking or child-specific sex crimes such as continuous sexual abuse and indecency. The committee substitute to Senate Bill 535 aims to close this gap by expanding Texas's Rape Shield Law to include all major sex crimes, ensuring consistent protections for victims. The expanded coverage includes trafficking of persons, continuous sexual abuse of a young child or a disabled individual, and indecency with a child. The committee substitute clarifies that reputation and opinion evidence is inadmissible. However, specific instances of a victim's past sexual behavior may be admissible in cases where lack of consent is an element of the offense. The committee substitute to Senate Bill 535 ensures that victims of trafficking and child-specific sexual offenses receive the same legal protections regarding the admissibility of evidence about their past sexual behavior as victims of sexual assault and aggravated sexual assault. I move suspension of the regular order of business.
Senator Huffman moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 535. Is there objection? Hearing none, rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading committee substitute for Senate Bill 535. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 535 relating the admissibility of evidence regarding a victim's past sexual behavior in prosecutions of certain trafficking, sexual, and assaultive offenses.
There is an amendment. Secretary, read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 1 by Huffman.
Senator Huffman, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, members. This floor amendment just simply strengthens the protections by adding another offense which was kind of accidentally left off. We added indecent assault as another offense that the Texas Rape Shield Law would have law would apply to. So I move adoption.
Senator Huffman moves adoption of floor amendment number 1. Is there objection? Hearing none, the amendment is adopted. Senator Huffman, you're recognized for a motion.
I move passage to engrossment of the committee substitute Senate Bill 535.
Senator Huffman moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none, bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Huffman, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Senator Huffman moves suspension of the 3-day rule. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage of Committee Substitute Senate Bill 535. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee Substitute Senate Bill 535 relating the admissibility of evidence regarding a victim's past sexual behavior in prosecutions of certain trafficking, sexual, or assaultive offenses.
Senator Huffman, you're recognized for a motion.
Move final passage of the committee substitute Senate Bill 535.
Senator Huffman moves final passage of Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 535. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator.
Thank you, members.
Senator Zaffarini, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 918.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members, I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business in order to take up and consider at this time Senate Bill 918 relating to the licensing and regulation of orthotists and prosthetists. This is a cleanup bill, members, requested by TDLR and would eliminate ambiguous language and ensure that the agency has clear authority to enforce licensure exemptions uniformly and fairly. Mr. President, I move suspension.
Senator Zaffarini moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 918. Is there objection? Hearing none, rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 918. Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 918 relating the licensing and regulation of orthotists and prosthetics.
Senator Zaffarini, recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Zaffarini moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none, bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Zaffarini, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the constitutional rule that bills be heard on 3 several days.
Senator Zaffarini moves suspension of the 3-day rule. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage Senate Bill 918. Secretary to read the caption.
Senate Bill 918 relating the licensing and regulation of orthotists and prosthetics.
Senator Zaffarini, recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Senator Zaffarini moves final passage of Senate Bill 918. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President and members, and Senator Schwertner.
Senator King, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on SCR 24.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Middle East is a virtually untapped regional market for Texas companies. In particular, Texas and Israel maintain a robust, multi-billion-dollar trade relationship, not the least of which is the F-35, produced in Fort Worth, but there is not a physical presence, no trade office in Israel that Texas can rely upon to build on and improve that bond. I know I routinely, and you probably do as well, receive calls from businesses in Israel trying to connect to opportunities in Texas. SCR 24 supports a Texas Trade and Investment Office in Jerusalem, Israel, as the center of trade and investment activities for Israel and countries that are part of the Abraham Accords or who have signed a peace treaty with Israel. There is a rider that has been included in Article 11 of the budget, and that's what's required to authorize the funding for this office and actually stand it up. But this resolution is in support of such an office, and I appreciate that almost every member of the Senate, and probably everybody if I would have called them, have signed on to this resolution. With that, move to suspend the regular order of business.
Senator King moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Concurrent Resolution 24. Is there objection? Hearing none, rules are suspended. Chair lays out the following resolution. Secretary, read the resolution.
SCR 24, expressing support for the strengthening of our partnership with Israel and for the creation of a Texas Trade and Investment Office in Israel.
Senator King, you're recognized for a motion.
Move adoption.
Senator King moves adoption of the resolution. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Bardwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores.
29 ayes and 1 present not voting.
Thank you,
Resolution is
members.
adopted. Senator Paxton, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 610.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members. I move to suspend the regular order of business to take up and consider Senate Bill 610. TDLR's anti-trafficking unit was established by appropriation during the 86th legislature. Senate Bill 610 reinforces the state's efforts to combat illicit massage businesses by codifying the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations anti-trafficking unit. This helps ensure that agency resources are efficiently and effectively leveraged in the fight against this horrific crime. I move to suspend.
Senator Paxton moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 610. Is there objection? Hearing none, rules are suspended. The chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 610. The secretary read the caption.
Senate Bill 610 relating to combating human trafficking by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation.
Senator Paxton, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Paxton moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Paxton, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Senator Paxton moves suspension of the 3-day rule. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Bardwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage of Senate Bill 610. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 610 relating to combating human trafficking by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation.
Senator Paxton, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Senator Paxton moves final passage of Senate Bill 610. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Bardwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook.
30 ayes, 0 nays. The bill is finally passed. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Senator Flores is recognized on a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 1300.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move to suspend the regular order of business, take up and consider Senate Bill 1300. Members, organized retail crimes cost Texas millions of dollars of losses every year. This issue has become a huge problem in rural areas of the state where some local businesses are forced to close their doors. It even applies more prevalently in our urban areas as well. We studied this issue during the interim, and we took input from numerous entities, associations, and most of all, our constituents. It quickly became clear that the organized retail theft statute in the penal code needed to be rewritten. The organized retail theft statute was not being utilized as intended. In 2022, the Texas Organized Retail Crime Association estimated a cost of $422 million in stolen goods, which resulted in approximately $21 million in lost state tax revenue. The National Retail Federation asserts that organized retail crimes cost retailers $720,000 per $1 billion in sales. Houston ranks third in the nation in retail crime rates, only behind San Francisco and Los Angeles. To protect Texans from these losses, Senate Bill 1300 addresses the prosecution and punishment of the criminal offenses of organized retail theft. The bill seeks to provide a more robust legal framework to deter organized retail theft by enhancing the penalties and clarifying the legal procedures involved in prosecuting such offenses. It specifies that an indictment or information in prosecution of an offense under Section 3116 of the Penal Code shall not be held sufficient for failure to name and describe each item of property stolen. It amends Chapter 38 of the Code of Criminal Procedure by adding Article 38.51, which provides definition for merchant and retail merchandise and establishes evidentiary rules for prosecution. It amends Section 31.01 of the Penal Code by updating definitions relating to retail theft. It also adds criteria for determining the value of stolen property. The bill enhances the penalties as follows: a Class B misdemeanor if the total value of the property involved in the offense is less than $100, but rather than a Class C misdemeanor if the total value involved in the activity is less than $100. A Class A rather than a Class B misdemeanor if the total value of the property involved in the offense is $100 but less than $750. A state jail felony rather than a Class A misdemeanor if the total value of the property involved in the offense is $750 or more but less than $2,500. A felony of the third degree rather than a state jail felony if the total value of property involved is $2,000 or more but less than $30,000. A felony of the second degree rather than a felony of the third degree if the total value of the property of the offense is $30,000 or more but less than $150,000. A felony of the first degree rather than a felony of the second degree if the total value of the property involved in the offense is $150,000 or more but less than $300,000. And a felony of the first degree punishable by imprisonment in TDCJ for life or any term of not more than 99 years or less than 15, and a fine not to exceed $250,000 if the total value of the property involved in the offense is over $300,000. Members, this bill was brought to us because folks are desperate, and we're having areas of our state, everywhere from our small feed stores in counties like mine to your communities in the big cities where you have deserts where they don't have drugstores, we don't have grocery stores, we don't have pharmacies, a lot of times for communities that need it the most because they can't do business because they're getting robbed by these gangs that are clearing the shelves out, and they can't do business and can't provide that quality of life for our citizens. So this is a rural, this is an urban issue, this is something important to our retailers, both large and small, and something that's very important for our communities, no matter where you're at. So this bill was written mostly in part by those that prosecute these types of crimes, and knowing that the roadblocks that they had been facing, the frustrations that they were having in trying to curb this in, and that's the reason for this bill. You know, we have studies that we do in interim items, a request that the Lieutenant Governor puts. You know, we do studies in the interim. But, you know, I'm very proud to work here in the Texas Senate where we not only address things and study them thoroughly, we look at both sides and see the issue in its totality and whether it's needed. And this is another one of those issues that we studied in the interim in criminal justice that was clearly needed in all of our communities and all across our state. So I move suspension of the Senate's regular order of business, Mr. President.
Senator Flores moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 1300. Senator West, for what purpose?
Question of the author.
Senator Flores, do you yield?
I do yield.
Senator West, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senator Flores, I'm with you. Here's my issue. Notice in the indictment. Normally, you've got to give a person accused of a crime notice of what they're being charged with. And what you do here in this particular bill is say, frankly, you don't have to list the property anymore. Help me to understand and appreciate how one gets notice if we don't specify the property that they're supposed to have stolen.
So previously, under the old bill, under theft, a prosecutor or a defense attorney, or if someone practiced, a defense attorney would say, if say they go in and clear out a whole shelf of inventory, this organized gang goes in and just clears them out. So generally what would happen under current law is that the defense attorney would say, okay, I want to list every single item on that shelf that was cleared out. And until you can do that, then you wanted to go on each individual item. What this bill does is you have the value of what's as a merchant and under merchandise, and they know the value of that stock shelf, and that stock shelf is cleared out by these gangs, or a certain part of the warehouse is cleared out of equipment, that's the value that's placed in terms of for prosecution. So it makes it less tenable to prosecute, if you will, by having to go in there and say, okay, you've robbed Home Depot of the entire shelf on C4, and that's where you had chainsaws, and you have to go with each individual chainsaw. In this case, you say on aisle C4, we know that there were 100 chainsaws there, and they're cleared out, and it's worth this value. So I hope I answered your question.
In part, because it sounds as though what you're talking about is value of the merchandise as opposed to the particular type of merchandise in the example that you just gave, okay? And that's my concern, being able to give some specificity in terms of what the person is accused of. And I understand the dilemma. The question is how do you give one more notice, if you will, as it relates to what?
Well, Senator,
no, let me finish, please. Because I'm pretty certain that this came up during committee.
Yes, sir.
Could you kind of tell me what the conversation was during committee about this issue?
About what? Again?
About the issue of providing notice in the indictment.
That in committee, we talked about the giving notice is something that the prosecutor would have to. Of course, he has to prove everything beyond a reasonable doubt.
I understand that, but
that's the standard.
Sure.
So, in order to be, charged in that information as to what you're being charged with, using the criteria of this bill, would be able to provide those parameters that the prosecutor must prove beyond a reasonable doubt in their information and in their indictment.
Well, it's not the issue of burden of proof, because that's pretty much set by the Constitution. But the issue is being able to say, Royce, you're accused of theft of stealing, whatever you want to say, water bottles, something like that. And this changes all of that. That's why I want to make sure we have this discussion.
Yes, thank you, Senator. So as I said earlier, it would say, if not that you do it, but if Royce went into a jewelry store and cleaned out the entire display of Rolex watches, just as an example.
Rolex watches.
And instead of going, that's not the type of store I can afford, quite frankly, but let's just use that as an example. It gets smashed and grabbed, and that display is what that merchant, now being called a merchant, has, and they know what the value is, what they had stocked in there. And it just gets grabbed and cleaned out. Before, you'd have to go watch number 1, watch number 2, to be able to go with what the total amount which the offense is charged for. But what this bill does, it says, if you're a merchant and you have a smash and grab of any type of merchandise, if you will, we'll just say jewelry store, and cleans it out, that the amount of money, the loss to the merchant is based on what they're missing as a totality.
And I'm not talking about the value of the money. I'm just talking about the description of the property that was stolen.
Well, the description in this case would be a grocery store in X location with a display value which contained, if it's fully stocked, contained X amount of merchandise, and that was now gone, and that's the value that would be used.
And so you're saying that the only thing you have to put in the indictment is that merchandise was stolen?
And merchandise, it still has to have a merchandise, but it still has to be we still have to determine what the value of that merchandise was in order to go to these different various levels of charge, whether it's a B, an A.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I understand what you're talking about in terms of value.
Yes, sir.
I'm talking about the description of the property.
Oh, yes,
Not, not the value. I understand the value piece.
Oh, we're not going to, it's not in the intent of this bill, and I believe I understand your question now. If I go in and you break in, just take a hardware store.
Right.
That they have stolen, that you know that ring has hit and stolen X amount of chainsaws. Chainsaws that the loss was X value, but they're chainsaws, and not just going and say, well, I think they put the whole store got hit, so let's although if they took everything out of the whole store, then that would also be a complete loss. But that's what we're talking about here is if I'm understanding your question, is a description of what, not individually, but generally what was taken. Is that what I'm hearing you ask? Is that what I'm hearing you ask, sir?
We're getting close now. We're getting close. All right.
Okay.
Heretofore, let's go back to chainsaws. The prosecution would put in their charging information that Royce stole chainsaws, okay, as an example, a value of whatever the value is, okay? Value is taken care of, I know that. My concern is getting a description, giving me as the attorney notice of what Senator Hinojosa is being charged with. And that's my concern right now, whether this bill gives adequate notice to a person charged of what they're being charged with. That's the concern. You're right, we've got to do something about this in terms of this theft, but making certain that whatever law we pass is constitutional.
Yes,
so
sir.
my question is whether or not just a general description now is going to be required by the prosecution, or whether they have to be more specific.
In terms of what it does is that if you have an inventory of, say, again, let's say another thing, go out and steal.
Just say chainsaws.
Okay, we'll stick with chainsaws.
Yeah.
So if you want, if what I'm hearing is you say that in your information you want to be specific to chainsaw A is a Fulon or the second one is a John Deere or a description of that nature, as opposed to my entire inventory of chainsaws on that entire shelf in my store was taken, and there were, we know that they were a shelf of 10 chainsaws worth this amount. That would be what we're looking at here in this bill, as opposed to going chainsaw A is a Poulan 750, or this one has a 12-inch chain, or this one has a 48. Before, under current law, you'd have to go in and describe every single bottle of Advil or whatever, anything that was taken, which makes the organized theft prosecution of that extremely difficult. And that's what we're trying to say. If you take out, what we're after here, we're after the people who are organized rings, going into our establishments and cleaning them out, and putting them out of business, and not having areas in our communities where they need these products not available because these organized rings have found a loophole and defense attorneys, and that's their job. I have nothing wrong with defense attorneys, but we're going to the individual item, and that was problematic for prosecutors and problematic for the business community, and that's why they asked for this bill to be changed to do what we're asking to do today.
Well, okay, and again, I understand what the problem is. I think the bill still needs some more work done to it, but obviously I'm going to be with you on the bill.
Thank you.
Hopefully I can have some input into your process if I find some additional information that we need to put into the bill so we'll withstand any constitutional challenge.
Thank you. I appreciate you looking out for making sure that this works. I know that our interests are mutual in protecting our communities and making sure that that you don't have to drive 10 miles to go get some Advil, that you can go in your community and our stores can
I don't use Advil. I use...
But we, as this goes to the House, we'll see how it progresses. But
Advil, I don't.
But I thank you very much for working with me on this bill, Senator, and
I look forward to working with you as the bill moves to the House.
I learn every day from you.
I've just learned a few things from you today.
Thank you.
Senator Menendez, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. President. Questions of the author.
Senator Flores, do you yield for questions?
I do yield.
Senator Menendez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Flores, I've been listening to the bill and your layout, and I did a quick search on the phone in terms of smash and grab, and I was just shocked by the number of these events that are videoed all around the country. And this one most recent, or not most recent, but a recent one, I saw 20 burglars come in, hooded, masked, covered, into a jewelry store, smashed all the cases, and apparently when they added everything up, it was like $2 million that they had stolen. 20 people all at once. And what you're saying, that the reason you're bringing the bill forward is because current law, and I can see that if you got 20 people smashing up a whole store, it would be so difficult for them to go item by item. They couldn't really tell exactly when they've smashed everything up, there's glass everywhere, for them to, line item everything that was stolen. You're saying you want to stop this, curb this, to protect all businesses, because whether it's a jewelry store or a CVS or a hardware store, it could be overwhelming to come back from that. Is that what you're trying to attempt to do today?
Yes, Senator, it is. That's what we're trying to address. And the people that we after are these organized gangs that roam our communities, roam our state, and are pretty much taking advantage of the fact that the current organized retail theft as it exists makes it extremely difficult in the scenario that you described. The bill has provisions for what you just described of people going in and overwhelming the clerks that are working in there, the employees that are working in there, and deals with, of course, the raising the penalty and making it more unprofitable for these people to operate and to take advantage of the merchants in our community that are there trying to serve the people that we represent, from mom and pop grocery stores all the way up to the big retail outlets. And that's exactly what this bill is trying to do, Senator.
I want to thank you. There's a bill on today's notice of intent. It talks about where you can buy groceries. And so I was doing some research about food deserts. And would it surprise you that in many parts of my district, people have to buy their groceries at a convenience store, at a Dollar General, at a small, because there isn't a convenience store within 10 or 15 miles. And so sometimes when they just need a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread, they go wherever it's closest. It is those small businesses that could least afford to have this type of activity. And probably it would take them so much more time to overcome these thefts. They might as well just shut the doors down. And who gets hurt in that process?
Who gets hurt is the small businesses and the communities that they serve.
Right.
That they should, our communities, big and small, should be able to have the quality of life, that to be able to go to this grocery store, to be able to go to the pharmacy, to be able to go to the local hardware store and do so in a place that doesn't have to barely hang on to business because they're being robbed by these organized gangs that are taking advantage of current weaknesses in the organized retail theft law. We're hoping, with your help and with the help of the rest of the members of this Senate and this legislature, to be able to work together with our DAs and our business community and our communities to curb that. Because right now, let me tell you, the apprehension rate is extremely low and the conviction rate even lower. And we need to reverse that in order to be able to help the communities like of yours in San Antonio that are dear to me, and the communities, my small town farm and ranch stores that are getting robbed, and people just trying to make a living and provide a good service for their community and the retail community, and to follow their American dream. And so this bill helps make their American dream more plausible and makes the dream of those criminals of profiting off of them less. Is that what we're after?
Well, Senator, I'll tell you, as someone who grew up watching parents work a small business, and one of them was retail, and Mom by herself sometimes in the shop. As a young person, it scared me to watch her sometimes want to take on a shoplifter, you know, and my mom's not a big lady, small lady, but every penny meant a lot to her. And so this bill, where a lot of people think that no one gets hurt because shoplifting, they think everybody's a big corporation, they need to realize that it hurts the pocketbooks of small, hardworking Texans, and it hurts the pocketbooks of all of us when people have to raise prices. They think big corporations will just write it off. They don't write it off. They pass it on in increases. So I appreciate you bringing the bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Gutierrez, for what purpose?
Just a few questions of the author.
Senator Flores, do you yield?
I do yield.
Senator Gutierrez, you're recognized.
Oh, thank you, Senator Flores. I appreciate the bringing this bill up, and I'm generally okay with the increase in the criminal penalties. But as we said before, this is a body where bills go one way and back and forth. So I would urge you, I think it's a little different than your layout or the things that you discussed with Senator Weston. I want to make very clear here. We are not doing anything on taking away anybody's opportunity of notice and the opportunity to be heard, correct?
We're not taking away anybody's opportunity or ability to be heard in the rule of law according to the rules of law in a courtroom.
And there's nothing in here, for instance, earlier you said that you can put it down in indictments or information in this bulk number, and I'm looking for that, and I'm thankful that it's not in here in totality. I think it does speak to values generally, but I guess what Senator West was trying to tell you is that specificity is important in indictments and in informations being the charging instrument for misdemeanors, correct?
Yes.
And indictments being the charging instrument for felonies.
Correct.
Okay. And so part of that notion of notice and an opportunity to be heard is that we do have to know the make and the model of the serial numbers of all the Rolexes. I agree with you. What's really happening in our pharmacies is they're going in there and they're grabbing all the razor blades, and they're grabbing like 20 of those razor blades that I use, whatever they're called, the Bics or the Schicks or whatever they are. And so that is what you laid out for our grocers and our pharmacies is so important, especially when we're talking about those lower end items that we can collectively say are worth a larger number. But we still need to ensure that we have specificity in indictments and informations.
Senator, so this also addresses when they go into a lumber yard late in the evening and they go to our local lumber yards, whether it's a corporate one or whether it's a local one in our small towns that you and I represent.
That's right.
And then go in there with trailer loads and clean out a whole section of 2x4s or 4x8s or plywood, and that's also retail theft. When they go in, when they break into Home Depot and steal, again, the reason I use chainsaws because apparently there's a lot of that going on with like chainsaws being stolen. But our district attorneys still have the burden of proof, and they still our district attorneys still must operate within the confines of the rules of the court and the rules of law. But what all this bill does, is it makes it less burdensome, where they don't have to go in with item number 1, green toothpaste, item number 2, orange toothbrush, but rather the whole shelf of that is bad. Certainly, they've been cleaned out, or they get robbed, and they can say that shelf contained X amount of dollars worth of inventory. As Senator Menendez said, giving the example of the jewelry store, that the total of the amount was based on what the inventory that they based on was stole out of the whole store. That's what
certainly on low-end retailers that makes sense. But sir, what I'm trying to say is you have to be able to say in an indictment or an information what you stole, because it's against public policy for me, for example, as the jewelry store owner, to say, oh, they stole 100 Rolexes when they really only stole 10.
Well,
because that would be insurance fraud, wouldn't it be?
Well, if anybody, if any of our retailers were to say, to be able to give false information to the investigators and to the DA that resulted in adverse effect, then that's a crime. So I'm not considering, that, if someone,
insurance fraud
if
happens.
someone falsifies, senators, absolutely. The rule of law is the rule of law. But here, what we're doing is in terms of this type of theft is not, it's helping the prosecution that are currently hindered by basically the lack of teeth of the current theft laws, where I hope I answered your question.
It did. What my concern here is this goes over, and as you talk to your House sponsor, sir, is that we do not affect the specificity that's required for 200 years in indictments and information and the protections under the Fourth Amendment. I understand exactly what you're trying to do. In your layout earlier, it was a bit confusing, but now you've cleared it up, and I know that you
I will say this to my attorney colleagues. Thank you very much for helping me go through this process. Thank you very much for helping me make a bill that protects Texas retailers and keep our communities safe and prosperous. And I thank you very much for the input that would make this bill better and more constitutional as it goes through the process. And I thank you very much for your vote on this as we move forward. And if I don't have it, I hope to earn it in the future.
I am voting for it because I think that as I read the bill, it's a good bill. The layout was different, and I think that we've covered that. But there's also a whole lot of wrongfully accused out there, so we've got to watch out and protect those folks too. Thank you.
And I thank you very much, and I have utmost confidence in the constitutional republic and the courtroom. I was once told, if you ever want to see the Constitution in action, go to a courtroom. I move suspension of the regular order of business.
Members, there is objection. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagaboo, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, and Races.
There being 28 ayes and 2 nays, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 1300. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 1300, relating to the prosecution and punishment of the criminal offense of organized retail theft.
Senator Flores, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Flores moves passage to engrossment. There is objection. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces, Hinojosa.
There being 28 ayes and 2 nays, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Flores, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move suspend the constitutional rule that bills be heard on 3 several days.
Senator Flores moves suspension of the 3-day rule. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces, Hinojosa.
There being 28 ayes and 2 nays, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage Senate Bill 1300. The secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 1300, relating to the prosecution and punishment of the criminal offense of organized retail theft.
Senator Flores, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage.
Senator Flores moves final passage of Senate Bill 1300. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces, Hinojosa.
There being 28 ayes and 2 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Senator Campbell, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 372.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider SB 372.
Senator Campbell moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 372.
Thank you, Mr. President. This legislation has been refiled from last session and it passed the Senate unanimously. This bill codifies the Attorney General's opinion that a corporate entity may serve as a substitute trustee for the purpose of conducting a mortgage foreclosure sale. This bill passed both chambers but was caught up in a veto massacre. With that, I move suspension.
Senator Campbell moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 372. Is there objection? Hearing none, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 372. The Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 372 relating to the persons authorized or appointed to exercise the power of sale under the terms of a contract lien on real property.
Senator Campbell, you're recognized for a motion.
I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Campbell moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? Hearing none, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Campbell, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved.
Senator Campbell moves suspension of the 3-day rule. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces.
There being 30 ayes and 0 nays, the rules are suspended. The Chair lays out on third reading and final passage of Senate Bill 372. The Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 372 relating to the persons authorized or appointed to exercise the power of sale under the terms of a contract lien on real property.
Senator Campbell, you're recognized for a motion.
Move final passage.
Senator Campbell moves final passage of Senate Bill 372. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa.
There being 30 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is finally passed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
Campbell. Senator Betancourt, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 509.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. The need for this bill is obvious. I'll just read it. It's a one-liner here. As soon as practicable for hearing and action under this code seeking a temporary restraining order, a court must notify the Attorney General. This is to have under the election code if there's an election contest or a TRO request that, on election day that the AG be notified, and we're taking a friendly amendment from Senator Birdwell, which puts more description on this. I move to suspend the regular order of business and take up Senate Bill 509.
Senator Eckhart, for what purpose?
To ask questions of the author.
Senator Betancourt, do you yield for questions?
Certainly.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized.
Thank you so much. Senator Betancourt, when a voter sees an infraction of the election code, they can make a complaint to the Ethics Commission, correct?
Well, if you're in Harris County, you can make a complaint to the Secretary of State. If you're one of 5 people involved in the process. So this basically is just a TRO notice that when, and I'll use Harris County example, sorry, but it's something fresh in my mind. In 2022, we had a judge receive a TRO from a third party. She did a one-party ex parte hearing. She didn't call the Republicans, she didn't call the AG. The AG found out about it, I think, an hour or so, 2 hours later. There was a Supreme Court hearing. The Supreme Court told them to set aside the TRO, to leave the polls open, and to segregate the ballots. Now, there was so much confusion that probably half the election judges didn't know they were supposed to stay open late, or they did stay open late and they didn't segregate the ballots, whatever. I think we just need a procedure that's really simple, that if you're trying to keep polls open, just notify the AG so that they can participate in the discussion, because it will probably all go like that to the Supreme Court anyway.
So I just want to get clarity, though. A TRO is not just for procedural complaints by election officers. A TRO would also be available for voters who see some other infractions. Say, for instance, if a city council member or a school board representative utilized government resources to advocate for a bond, correct?
Well, I mean, I haven't considered that, Senator Eckhart. I'm not sure on election day going in and trying to do that would have any positive result for even if the person was correct, because what's the judge supposed to do? Throw out the election at that point? So again, this is just a simple, hey, if you're going for TR, notify it. Senator Birdwell has a longer amendment that specifies there's a, working with the AG, there's a email account, you've got X number of hours, you have to notify. We've got some definition coming, but I wouldn't say this is somehow an election review or overturn type of TRO.
Well, Section E that this particular bill is amending actually is broader than that. Let me go to Section E. 273. Section E, a person who is being harmed or is in danger of being harmed by a violation or threatened violation of this code is entitled to appropriate injunctive relief to prevent the violation from continuing or occurring. So it is far broader than just a elections administrator circumstance. Any voter, any person can petition the court for a temporary restraining order on the allegation that they will be harmed if action isn't taken immediately.
You're correct. I was just kind of speculating on the result, okay? And in a scenario like that, let's say, okay, it's a city council election, they're near a poll, and their opponent is electioneering within the 100-foot process, okay? They would go try to get a restraining order effectively against that process if the judge wouldn't do it. But again, the same mechanism would apply. The AG would be notified, and in a situation like that, they would probably not try to intervene because that's not a state-related issue. That would be my estimate of how it would play out, but I'm certainly not trying to say that the probability of somebody doing it doesn't exist. It's just that somebody might try to get injunctive relief. There may be a chance they would get it, but more likely that's more like an election contest issue, long term.
But your bill does not say it must be a TRO of a election infraction of statewide significance. It's notice of a TRO no matter what its level of significance.
Right, and this one is just designed as a blanket that if you want to get a TRO, and this amendment that Senator Birdwell has will specify a specific box that it has to be responded to. It may be done virtually as opposed to in person, and it's really designed to make sure that there is someone somewhere that is keeping track of these TROs before we end up like we did in Harris County, having a Supreme Court hearing to overturn a judge's verdict, which was totally unnecessary. If they had all parties together, they could have come to that conclusion initially.
And a TRO is a civil matter and does not require that the infraction rise to the level of criminality, correct?
That's correct. It's just strictly somebody going in and getting injunctive relief, okay? And I think it's a rational step because anyone can, let's say there was some argument in city council in Lubbock that really does involve, a statewide issue. I think the AG would probably just pass on that and not do anything with it. So, but we have to have somebody at least getting the motions so we know what's happening on election day. And as more elections are done on May, or now especially with another bill coming, maybe just November, this is going to take on more, should I say, need to have somebody watching all these TROs, at least having the opportunity to intervene, because they could just decide to do nothing or they could actually intervene.
Do you anticipate that the preponderance of these TROs will not rise to statewide significance?
I think that if it's about elections polls being open, I think that rises to it. If it's on like minor infractions of somebody crossing the 100-foot line, I would hope they wouldn't take it up, but they're going to have to use their good judgment.
Thank you for answering my questions.
No, thank you.
Senator West, for what purpose?
Question of the author.
Senator Bettencourt, do you yield for questions?
Certainly.
Senator West, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think my questions were asked by Senator Eckhart, so I'm going to yield back the floor to Senator Bettencourt.
Thank you.
Senator Bettencourt moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 509. There is objection. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Bettencourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagan, Boo, Hall, Hancock.
There being 24 ayes and 6 nays, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 509. The Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 509 relating to requiring notice to the Attorney General in an action under the Election Code seeking a temporary restraining order.
There is an amendment. The Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor Amendment number 1 by Birdwell.
Senator Birdwell, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this amendment is intended to give the Office of the Attorney General an appropriate amount of time to prepare and appear for temporary restraining order hearings under this legislation for the state's position to be heard. This amendment would prohibit a court from starting the temporary restraining order hearing until 2 hours after sending the notice via email to the Attorney General. This amendment mirrors similar language already in statute under Section 402.010 of the Government Code regarding legal challenges to the constitutionality of state statutes. Under that existing statute, the courts are required to serve notice of constitutional challenges to the Attorney General by either certified or registered mail or electronically to an email address designated by the Attorney General for the purposes of this section. Just like the current process for challenging constitutionality of state statute, the Attorney General would have a public available website dedicated to providing information on the rule created by this legislation and include the designated email for the court to correspond with for such notices. The amendment would also allow the Attorney General to waive the 2-hour notice requirement should it not rise to the threshold of criticality in the Attorney General's opinion, and allow the Attorney General to participate in these hearings either in person or remotely. Finally, this amendment would make temporary restraining orders void if the court does not provide the timely notice as prescribed under this legislation. I believe it's acceptable to the author, and I move adoption, Mr. President.
Amendment is acceptable to the author.
Senator Eckhart, for what purpose?
To ask questions of the author of the amendment.
Senator Birdwell, do you yield for questions?
Yes, Mr. President.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Senator Birdwell. With regard to the last section of your amendment, a temporary restraining order issued in violation of this section is void and unenforceable. Can you tell me a little bit about that, since TROs generally are an expedited process to prevent or end the continuation of an action that is harmful in an election?
What would be void here is if the Attorney General is not notified. Should this go into effect, a TRO is requested, the court does not notify the Attorney General, then whatever comes out of that TRO, if enacted, without the Attorney General being notified, it would be void.
So your intention is that it's really a failure to notify and not the other provisions with regard to giving 2 hours to appear and the ability to waive off.
Correct. The purpose of that last paragraph is to ensure notification of the Attorney General for the Attorney General either to decide to engage in the TRO or to waive engagement in that TRO. The 2 hours is designed so that by the time when they receive, and having spoken with the Attorney General's office, in receiving that email, they've got about 15 to 30 minutes to decide the legal matter as to whether they engage or not. Then that gives them 90 minutes to make a decision as to either send a representative, say something's happening in Beaumont, somebody from the Attorney General's office in Houston needs to get there in person, but that's why the 2-hour window. But the aspect of being void is if they fail to notify prior to the hearing.
In the high probability that most of these TROs don't rise to state level significance, did you contemplate, and if so, why did you reject the opportunity to cure in the event that it really isn't a statewide issue?
That's why we give the Attorney General the ability to waive it. Once the Attorney General is notified, if he determines in 5 minutes, hey, I don't care about this, then he waives it, court can move.
Thank you for answering my questions.
You're welcome, Senator.
Question is on the adoption of Floor Amendment 1. Senator Betancourt has indicated the amendment is acceptable as the author. Is there any objection? There is objection. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa.
There being 24 ayes and 6 nays, the amendment is adopted. Senator Betancourt, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move passage of SB 509 to engrossment.
Senator Betancourt moves passage to engrossment. There is objection. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces, Hinojosa, Hidalgo.
There being 24 ayes and 6 nays, the bill is passed through engrossment. Senator Betancourt, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
So moved, Mr. President.
Senator Betancourt moves suspension of the 3-day rule. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces, Hinojosa, Hidalgo, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson.
There being 24 ayes and 6 nays, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage of Senate Bill 509. Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 509 relating to requiring notice to the Attorney General in an action under the Election Code seeking a temporary restraining order.
Senator Betancourt, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move final passage of the Frickin' Fract Act. That is Senate Bill 509.
Senator Betancourt moves final passage of Senate Bill 509. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa.
There being 24 ayes and 6 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Betancourt.
Thank you, Mr. President and members.
Members, this is the last bill. Senator Hughes is recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 840.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the Senate's regular order of business to take up and consider at this time Senate Bill 840, committee substitute. Members, this is about housing, about that American dream of home ownership, which we are aware is becoming increasingly out of reach for the everyday Texan. And so many bills this session seek to address that. This is one of them. We know from the Comptroller's latest numbers that Texas is about 300,000 homes short of the need just to meet population, just to meet demand. Often the shortage is because of unreasonable government rules that further constrict supply and, of course, raise the price for Texas families. So Senate Bill 840 would do what? It would allow properties in commercially zoned areas to be built or converted to residential or mixed use without having to go through the rezoning process, which is expensive and duplicative. Now, we want to stress when we talk about zoning, this bill does not allow residential property to be converted to commercial. That would be a problem. This goes the other direction. Commercial property can be converted to residential. The current rezoning process is lengthy, complex, legal and consulting experts are required, adding costs, and every time we add to the cost of that home, we price Texas families out of home ownership. I think we all realize that. And so that's what this bill addresses. I think this makes sense to the extent that there are going to be impact fees because of new projects. Of course, developers are still going to be responsible for paying those fees, but that rezoning process would be affected by this bill. I could go into more detail, but I will mention that there will be I anticipate two floor amendments, which will make a good bill even better. Those amendments address many of the concerns that were raised by members of the Senate. And at this time, I move suspension of the regular order of business.
Senator West, for what purpose?
Question of the author.
Senator Hughes, do you yield for questions?
Of course I'll yield.
And just a couple of questions.
Senator West, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. In terms of commercial property, what I want to make certain is that if we have a plant, and that plant is making tires or something like that, would that tire plant be eligible to convert itself to housing, residential housing?
So, Senator, the idea here is either undeveloped commercial property or property that, say, is a warehouse, or if it's some kind of a factory or some kind of an office building. Many times we think of office space. Commercial office space is not as in demand as it was because folk work from home and that sort of thing. So we're talking about raw land as well as existing buildings that are commercial that could be residential. So it's all of the above.
I just want to make certain that if we have some industry, we're not saying that we can take that plant in some industrial district and turn around and convert that to low-income housing. This bill doesn't do that, does it?
No, Senator, that's a great point. Let's think about what that neighborhood would be like. Under this bill, for land to be converted to residential, it's got to be at least 1,000 feet from industrial settings like you're talking about. Thank you. That's important. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
That is covered.
Senator Hinojosa from Hidalgo, for what purpose?
Well, Senator Hughes, yield for a couple of questions.
Senator Hughes, will you yield for questions?
Of course I'll yield.
Senator Hinojosa, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I read through your bill, how would you define an industrial site or industrial zoning?
So, Senator, thank you. If you're talking about the matter that Senator West and I just described, where we wouldn't put a housing development within 1,000 feet of an industrial setting, and is that what you're talking about?
Well, 1,000 feet is not too much, not too far away from an industrial park. I guess my concern is this: a developer could come in and build a whole bunch of houses next to a coal mine.
Well, Senator, so heavy industrial use is described, storage, processing, manufacturing use, which processes flammable or explosive materials. So that would cover a coal mine, hazardous conditions, noxious, offensive odors, smoke, noise, that sort of thing. So heavy industrial use is about a setting like that. That's exactly right.
Well, my concern is that you will allow developers to go ahead and place all type of housing, usually for lower middle class or poor families, in areas that will be a danger to their livelihood or their health.
Well, Senator, I would say that this could be a family wanting to build a house themselves. It could be a developer wanting to build a house. No one is required to go there, but it's at some point we see it as a question of supply and demand. There are just not enough houses, not enough housing for families, especially for middle income and lower income folks. So the idea is we want to increase the supply so the costs aren't just through the roof for homeowners. Of course, no one has to live any place they don't want to. They're not going to be forced to, but it makes more housing available in commercial areas. The main application is office buildings, commercial office space, but it also applies to raw land as well.
Well, here's my concern, and I understand that the cost of housing has gone up. We have inflation. We have supply chain issues, cost of materials, tariffs. But does the bill allow for residential houses to be built next to refineries, for example, in Corpus Christi?
Well, Senator, 1,000 feet is a buffer that's pretty common, and you may know better than I do, but in land use, 1,000 feet is a pretty common buffer. Of course, if you're in a rural area or a suburban area, it might be different than in a tightly developed urban area, but 1,000 feet is kind of the rule of thumb that they use.
Well, it seems to me that we're taking away all the zoning authority from cities to be able to at least provide housing where it's supposed to be safe for families and not a risk to their health. You build houses next to refineries, 1,000 feet is really not very far from the possible pollution from dirty air and other pollutants.
Well, Senator, there are folks in urban areas today that live within 1,000 feet of places like this. Of course, this is only talking about land that's either not developed or it's already got a commercial use, a warehouse, an office, existing space like that.
Well, I'm not really convinced. I guess your goals and objective with this bill that they would not be harmful to residential homes for, especially for poor families. It seems like you're gonna just pack them into places where their health will be at risk next to industrial parks. I mean, just my concern about your bill. I understand that we have a need for housing. I understand the prices have gone up. But there are other reasons for that, not necessarily zoning. Zoning is a factor out of many factors now involved, as you well know. Since COVID, the pandemic, everything has gone up. Price of cars, groceries, homes, you name it, it's gone up. And I'm not sure that even though we're taking 2 or 3 or 4 different pieces of legislation to try to address this issue, that this is the way to do it. But again, just thank you for answering my questions.
Well, Senator, thank you, and I understand. And zoning is part of the process. So really, this bill is just about supply and demand. And the more land that is unavailable for homes, there's less. That means that's more scarcity. It means the costs go up. That's basically the premise of the bill. But I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Senator Gutierrez, for what purpose?
Will the senator yield for a few questions?
Senator Hughes, will you yield?
Of course I'll yield.
Senator Gutierrez, you recognize.
Senator, I'm sorry, I don't have the bill in front of me, and I apologize to you. And just by the back and forth with different people, I'm just trying to ascertain, as we often do, we tell cities, okay, this is the law and this, and then they have to follow it, right? Federal government does the same kind of thing to us. And so my question to you is, without having the bill in front of me, maybe you could just answer this. This doesn't put you in the role of the zoning commissioner. In other words, if a certain piece of property in Bexar County fits what you're saying here in your bill, does that mean that my city's zoning then has to change that, downzone it to a mixed use?
So the effect of the bill, Senator, would be for commercial property. And again, we're not going residential to commercial, but for commercial property, for that type of property.
You're downzoning, yeah.
Zone that way, then rezoning would not be required. Building permit still required, impact fee still required, but rezoning would not be required in this situation. That's the effect of this bill.
But that gets rid of local control, does it not?
To the extent that it provides more housing in those areas, it impinges on local control. As you know, the states created the federal government and the states created the local government. So that's, we have a different role here, as you know. Sometimes we like it, sometimes we don't, but you're correct. That's what the bill does.
That's fair, but you're not the zoning commissioner in San Antonio, Texas on the east side in District 3 or in District 2. And so you don't know, Senator Hall or Senator Flores may not know, well, Senator Flores does because he's San Antonio guy, and for a little while, and he represented us for a good long while. But, Senator Colcourse, she doesn't know a darn thing about my district in San Antonio on the southeast side. What's next to the industrial park, the commercial building. We all want more housing. I think that's kind of a Hobson's choice you're giving us. We all want more housing,
I think so.
But you're putting yourself in the position of the zoning commissioner. I just want to make that clear.
We are saying as a matter of state policy, we want more choices, more supply, more housing. That, you're right. You're right about that.
Well, it seems to me like we're choosing to preach down to the. We've gotten to we're telling cities what to do, mayors and city council people, and now we're going to the zoning commissioner and we're telling them, hey, this is how you're going to do it. That's all I want to know. People in other cities, 31 different counties, are going to now vote to tell your cities how they're going to run their neighborhoods. That's all I wanted to know. It does impinge on local control. You answered my question.
Oh, thank you, Senator. More housing, more choices, lower prices.
Senator Johnson, for what purpose?
Question for the author.
Senator Hughes, do you yield?
Of course I'll yield.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Hughes, picking up on some conversations you've had with other members just now regarding siting near industrial facilities. First of all, the intent of this bill, I presume, was not to build houses near industrial sites, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, the intent is to provide more choices for homeowners and folks who want to have a place to live.
And as I understood this intent behind this bill, consistent with things that other states have done in the country, is to make commercial properties like underutilized office buildings available for residential use, or small office buildings available for residential use so people can live right by where they work. Is that more consistent with your intent?
Commercial properties, some of those are going to be existing buildings, some will be undeveloped land. And again, we would never say that if an area is zoned residential, we're going to put commercial there, because folks came to that residential area and to live there on a certain expectation. But when we're talking about commercial property, yes, unused office space, warehouses, existing buildings, and also undeveloped land.
Okay, thank
you. So
that's
the concept. You got it.
And I like the concept. I share the concerns of Senator Hinojosa. I'm not sure 1,000 feet is the right number. We've had discussion with Senator Kolkhorst's bill about health, and Senator Schwartner's comments on that, about the effects on people's health that have nothing to do with their health care, but where they live. And if we are crowding people near industrial sites, it could not only be a miserable place to live, it could add health care costs to this state. So I'm not sure 1,000 feet is the right number. I do appreciate the concept behind the bill, so this is a difficult one for me.
No, thank you, Senator. That's an important point. And I would say, with regard to the property this applies to, it's not industrially zoned, it's commercially zoned. So I want to be clear that if that helps, we're not talking about property that's zoned for heavy industry, but zoned for commercial.
So long as it is 1,000 feet from an industrial zone.
Zoned for commercial and at least 1,000 feet from industrial purposes, yeah. Both. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
No,
I wonder
thank you,
if you consider that if that conversation continues in the House, I wonder if you'd consider a larger setback.
No, thank you, Senator. We want to get this right.
Thank you.
Senator Menendez, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. President. Questions of the author?
Of course, I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
President.
Hughes yields for questions. You're recognized. Senator Menendez.
Senator Hughes, I did open the bill up on page 2. I think the one that answers some of the questions and the concerns, line 37, where it says this section does not apply to 1, a zoning classification that allows heavy industrial use, or 2, land located within 1,000 feet of an existing heavy industrial use or development site, airport, or military base. And so I appreciate the fact, while I have concerns, I share concerns with many of my colleagues, what I understand that your bill is trying to do is to help use buildings that are currently underutilized. And sometimes the reason they stay underutilized, old commercial warehouses and this sort of thing, is because the legal process to go through the potential for zoning, you invest, you put all these things in, and then when you go to the zoning commission and you get the recommendation that ultimately is decided by the city council, that you may be in hundreds of thousands of dollars before you even know if you're going to be able to build apartments or do what you need to do. Is that what you're trying to address?
Senator, thank you. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I have heard from people in the past that the risk was too great to roll the dice on an old building because they would have to use so much to invest, and therefore there was no way to even try to provide some mixed use. Because what I like about this bill is that by lowering the lack of uncertainty and expense, that the possibility of including more mixed units, in terms, when I say mixed units, affordable units.
Right.
And that is what the need is the greatest in this state today. The lack of affordable housing. All of our major metropolitan areas are short hundreds of thousands of units. We can't build our way out of it quick enough to give people safe, quality, affordable places to live. Is that what you're trying to address?
Senator, there's no getting around those numbers. You're exactly right. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing the bill forward. Thank you, Mr. President, members.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Hughes moves suspension of the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 840. There is objection. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces, Hinojosa, Hidalgo.
There being 23 ayes and 7 nays, the rules are suspended. Is that better? Chair lays out on second reading committee substitute for Senate Bill 840. The secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 840 relating to certain municipal regulation of certain mixed-use and multifamily residential development projects and conversion of certain commercial buildings to mixed-use and multifamily residential occupancy.
The following amendment.
Floor amendment number 1 by Betancourt.
Senator Betancourt, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment simply sets the population bracket up from 90,000 to 150,000. This is the same bracket that we used on the initial priority SB 15 housing affordability bill last week. I believe is acceptable to the author.
Senator West, for what purpose?
Question of the author of the amendment.
Senator Betancourt, do you yield for questions?
Certainly.
Senator Betancourt, what are you doing with this?
Senator West, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senator Betancourt, what are you doing with this amendment again?
This is the same population bracket amendment that we had on the original SB 15 housing affordability bill. We moved that bracket during the debate from 90 to 150,000 on an amendment by Senator Parker. So we're standardizing that on the second of the housing affordability bills, which is Senator Hughes's Bill 840.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment is acceptable to the author.
Move adoption, Mr. President.
Senator Johnson, for what purpose?
Questions for the author of the amendment and for the author of the bill.
Senator Betancourt, do you yield for questions on the amendment?
I'll happy to go first, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President. Sorry.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized.
Just thank you, Mr. President. Edify me. Why do we have any bracket on this whatsoever?
The bracket is designed to make sure that the affordable housing bills affect the same group, which is approximately 18 of the cities in Texas, and that we're going to standardize that through the process as a way to start these housing affordability bills.
And I appreciate the standardization, having a similar standard for all, but why shouldn't this law apply irrespective of population?
You could ask the author of that if you would like to, but
Senator Hughes.
But I'm as the committee chairman, I'm happy to standardize these bills with that bracket.
I appreciate that, Senator Betancourt. Senator Hughes, why would we have any bracket at all? Shouldn't this apply equally to every city?
Senator Hughes, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, like much of the legislation passed in this body, this represents a negotiation. And so the originally filed bill had a different set of numbers. Those changed through the committee process, and they continue to evolve. And so It's a matter of getting a number that a majority of the Senate is comfortable with so that we can get good policy put in place.
Okay. I'd be comfortable with 0, but that's not what's in the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator West, for what purpose?
Question of the author of the amendment.
Senator Betancourt, do you yield for questions?
So, Senator Betancourt, if this amendment
Senator
goes...
West, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I apologize. So this amendment goes on. It would be in a city of 150,000, in a
county of 300.
So that would apply basically to urban counties?
Mostly, but suburban counties are well north of 300,000 too as well now.
So urban.
These bills were filed with a 90,000 bracket.
No, I understand.
Which had 33 cities applied to it. This bracket takes it to 18 cities, but it's in the same ratio of the counties with the suburban and urban counties over 300,000.
Well, let me understand this. So if a city's 150,000 or more, assuming this goes on and this passes, those cities cannot then make a determination as to whether or not, for health and safety reasons, let me put that in there, that these commercial, quote unquote, more specifically, industrial plants, that's what I'm looking at, are not suitable for, let me finish for low-income housing, right?
I would like you to direct that question to the bill author because, because there's a 1,000-foot set aside in this bill, as well as the fact this is primarily designed for commercial to residential use of existing commercial structures.
Well, okay, Mr. President, may I ask a question of the author as it relates to this amendment?
Senator Hughes, do you yield?
Of course, I'll yield.
Senator West, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So, as it relates to industrial areas, and that's my concern, because I've had to do a lot of things in my district where we've had housing that was built in proximity to industrial plants. And the question is, I know you have the 1,000 feet in here, but do you think it would be wise for us also to put in here, if a city who's on the ground thinks that there may very well be some health and safety related issues, that they would be able to then take those concerns and give them priority?
Well, thank you, Senator. I would say, first of all, I may have skipped an important step. If land is zoned for heavy industrial, it's off the table. So any land that is zoned for heavy industrial is not covered by this bill. I want to make sure I said that right. If it's zoned for heavy industry, it is not covered by this bill. It would not be affected at all. If it's zoned commercial, only then do we reach the issue of the 1,000-foot setback. So commercial would be an office building. It would obviously would be a shopping center.
You've addressed my concerns.
And so I believe that's addressed. And thank you for helping me clarify that.
Thank you.
Question is on floor amendment number 1. There is objection. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco,
If we're going to do it the hard way.
Campbell,
Right,
Cook.
yes, we're one. Okay. Hold a vote.
Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, give me a 1 and then a 2. What's objection? I thought you were a 2. He did a 1, then he did a 2. He did both.
On the amendment. I don't know, we're voting on the amendment. On the amendment, we're just voting on the amendment. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces, Hinojosa, Hidalgo, Huffman, Hughes.
30 ayes and 0 nays on the amendment. Congratulations, Senator Betancourt.
I'm glad you called the vote, Mr. President. That's like a hot knife through butter on this one. All right, thank you.
The following amendment, the Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor Amendment number 2 by Alvarado.
Chair recognizes Senator Alvarado on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Hughes, I know we're trying to strike a balance here, making sure that certain cities can do what they need to do, and we want to make sure that something that's in the industrial area is not included, but also making sure that we have all the resources to create more affordable housing. The concern I had with the bill was making sure that municipalities and not municipal employees would not be responsible for violations. And so because of that, we worked with your team and came up with some language that I believe is going to be acceptable. Members, what this amendment does is that it keeps the core purpose of this bill intact, ensuring that municipalities, as the entity with the policy setting authority and operational oversight, are the appropriate party and not the municipal employee to bear legal responsibility. I want to thank you, Senator Hughes, for working with our staff on this.
Senator Johnson, for what purpose?
Question of the author of the bill regarding the amendment.
Come back to you, Senator Johnson.
Okay.
Chair recognizes Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Alvarado for the amendment, and I'm optimistic that this amendment will bring even more unity and felicity and joy, and it's acceptable to the author.
Felicity.
Senator Hughes, do you yield for questions from Senator Johnson?
I yield. Of course I yield, Mr. President.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Hughes, I do appreciate you working with Senator Alvarado on this amendment. I think it's very important. We do not want to set a precedent of people being able to, developers being able to sue members of city councils and zoning commissions over these kinds of things. But I am concerned that it doesn't go further, that it doesn't strike the entire paragraph regarding waiver of sovereign immunity with regard to cities. And let me compare this to a couple other areas. There is a provision in the local government code that provides for waiver of sovereign immunity of the municipal entity, where the municipal entity itself is in breach of contract. We also have waiver of sovereign immunity, as we should, in whistleblower acts and certain tort claims directly against the city. This bill, as currently drafted, would give a developer, for example, an economic cause of action against the city basically for failure to comply with this bill. That's not like a whistleblower act. That's not like the city breaching a contract. It's a whole new place where we're starting to pull away sovereign immunity. And I think it starts us down a very dangerous road. As an attorney, you know that a developer could bring a declaratory judgment action in court and have this cleared up, presumably pretty quickly on summary judgment. I would like you to pull this bill down and redraft Senator Alvarado's spectacular amendment to make it doubly spectacular, joy, harmony, and unity, and get rid of this attack on sovereign immunity in cities. I think it's taken us down a dangerous road. What do you say?
Senator, thank you for that discussion. And we understand the purpose of the amendment. We believe it's a good idea. Sovereign immunity is there for a reason. When we're talking about major state policy like this and the fundamental need for more choices, more housing, lower prices, we believe, I'm about to do the Senator West and say, let me finish, but you didn't, but I'll wait. But when we're talking about major policy like this, we believe it's appropriate to incentivize the government to follow the law. So we believe it's an appropriate use in this bill.
I don't.
Senator Johnson, for what purpose?
Is
You
there a
want to
new
continue
purpose?
in your questioning?
Oh, no, I'm all done. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Questions on the adoption of the amendment? Is there objection? Hearing none. Hearing none, the amendment's adopted. Senator Hughes, you recognize for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Hughes moves passage to engrossment. Is there objection? There is objection. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces, Hinojosa, Hidalgo, Huffman, Hughes.
There being 23 ayes and 7 nays, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Hughes, you recognize for a motion to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
No, but I will. So you're behind it.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move suspension of the constitutional rule that bills be read on 3 several days.
Senator Hughes moves suspension of the 3-day rule. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Hidalgo.
There being 25 ayes and 5 nays, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on third reading and final passage committee substitute for Senate Bill 840. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 840 relating to certain municipal regulation of certain mixed-use and multifamily residential development projects.
Senator Gutierrez, for what purpose?
Speak against the bill.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Look, Senator Hughes, this isn't the mountain I'm going to die on today. But we all have to ask ourselves, we each have individual communities. This bill likes to put us in the Hobson's choice of saying we're for housing or not. Everyone in this room is for housing. The local control part is what really concerns me and should concern each and every one of you. What you're telling your mayors back home, your city council people back home, your zoning commissioners back home. You're telling them that Brandon Creighton knows more about what's going on in the southeast side of San Antonio than zoning commissioner Joe Sanchez. You're telling them that Paul Betancourt knows more about what's going on in Amarillo than the zoning commissioner in that community. And so here we are in this space where for many years from my Republican colleagues, I heard local control, local control, local control. Hell, they had me believing it. And guess what? I'm all about local control. But that's not what this bill does. It abrogates each and every bit of it. And the more and more we continue to erode at our cities and counties' local control issues, well then hell, what do we need them for? We might as well just eliminate them out of the Constitution. What do we need those folks? If we're going to be the dog catcher, let's go do that, because being senator is hard. What are we telling our folks? What are you telling the folks in Houston and in East Texas? You're telling your local officials that you don't know a damn thing about the building next door. What Senator Hughes does, those of you that vote for this bill do, I guess. That's not the kind of government that I ever envisioned. One that tells people what to do at that level. We've got a governor in the central office that tells this city and my city how to cut their trees. He says, you can't use that city street. You can't expand it. You can't do the plans that you want because it used to be a Texas highway. And now we're going to get into zoning? I created that shirt a long time ago. Greg Abbott for mayor, because being governor is hard.
Senator Gutierrez, no need to use personalities in the debate.
The governor in the central office for mayor, because being governor is hard. Is that what we're telling now to our constituents? Roland Gutierrez for zoning commissioner, because being senator is hard.
Senator Eckhart, for what purpose?
To speak in opposition to the bill.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I did not ask questions on this bill because my colleagues were doing such a wonderful job of it. I absolutely share Senator Hughes' concern with regard to the need for more affordable units all across the state of Texas. We are in desperate need of more affordable units, and the state of Texas puts almost nothing in investment into affordable housing, whereas our municipalities are investing considerably. Our municipalities have, for decades, been investing considerably in the establishment of affordable housing, questioning them while providing them no assistance just feels so deeply wrong and disrespectful. So let me raise some specific examples. What we are doing here by stepping into zoning cases, what we are doing is we are creating conflicts of land use because we don't know the land use that our zoning commissions and our city councils are dealing with. If you just plunk down a multifamily unit in a commercially zoned area, that commercially zoned area most likely is louder than a residential area. That commercially zoned area most likely has no sidewalks because there isn't a whole lot of pedestrian traffic. That commercial area probably doesn't have any parks either. But your bill will plop down a multifamily in this commercial area in service of more affordable units that are of such poor quality because they're so poorly served in an area that is inappropriate. Furthermore, you're also preventing the municipality of demanding the kind of development that would be appropriate by disallowing permit review fees, even though a multifamily in an otherwise commercial area is actually a more difficult application to review. But your bill will not allow them to charge a fee for that review. It also will not allow the municipality to charge an impact fee for having to put in sidewalks, for instance. It also will prohibit the municipality from requiring a parkland dedication, even though this commercial area probably has no parks because it was a commercial area. This bill, although I believe is well-intentioned, is incredibly obtuse with regard to land use between commercial and residential properties. And I cannot vote for it because our local governments, our city governments, and our zoning commissions are working really hard every day. Certainly they come in conflict with developers, but they manage that conflict. Putting the big boot of the state on the necks of our local governments just plays into the hands of developers who have plenty of resources to find the appropriate balance with our municipal counterparts. Our municipal counterparts are our partners in affordable housing. They are not our impediments, and we should be working with them. And finally, when there are regulations at the municipal level that are an impediment to affordable housing, city councils are much more responsive to their own electorate much quicker than we can be. We meet every other year. City councils meet every single week. We need to trust our partners in municipal government to help address this affordability crisis. And we need to lend a helping hand rather than put a boot on their neck.
Chair recognizes Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members. I thank each one for their patience during this debate. I thank each one for their participation, no matter how a senator ultimately votes. The debate is healthy. I will spare you a detailed rebuttal of all the points against the bill. The bottom line is there's no new land coming online. It's supply and demand. If there's an existing commercial space being underutilized and folks want to live there, no government, city, state, or federal, should stand in their way. If there's land ripe for development, for homes, for families, no government should stand in the way. All the protections are in place. We already have. This lowers the cost, increases supply. And so I respectfully move final passage of Senate Bill 840.
Senator Hughes moves final passage of committee substitute for Senate Bill 840. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces.
There being 24 ayes and 6 nays, the bill is finally passed. Congratulations, Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members.
The President's desk is clear. Are there any announcements? Senator Betancourt, you're recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, the Senate Government on Local Committee will reconvene at 5 o'clock. Let's get moving. We got 4 bills. We can do them, I think, in an hour and a half. We're going to be meeting at 5 p.m. certain in E1.028. Thank you, Mr. President, members.
Thank you, Senator Betancourt. Senator Hughes for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members and those participating, the Senate Committee on State Affairs will resume the meeting convened this morning, and we will be coming back at 5:15 today in the Senate chamber, Senate Committee on State Affairs, for the previously posted meeting. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Chair recognizes the Dean of the Senate for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate recess until 11 a.m. Tuesday, March 25th, pending the reading and referral of bills.
Is there objection? The chair hears none. The Senate stands in recess until 11 a.m. Tuesday, March 25th, pending the reading and referral of bills.
Stop. Okay. Senate Bill 2061 by Parker relating to prior authorization or pre-certification for the repair of complex rehabilitation technology equipment under Medicaid to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2062 by Parker relating to provision of and access to services for children with certain health care needs to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2063 by Parker relating to ad valorem tax protests and appeals on the ground of the unequal appraisal of property to local government. Senate Bill 2064 by Perry relating to the exemption of motor vehicles transferred from a decedent's estate to finance. Senate Bill 2065 by Huffman relating to the Texas Emergency Services Retirement System to finance. Senate Bill 2066 by Huffman relating to the repeal of the Texas Research Incentive Program to finance. Senate Bill 2067 by Betancourt relating to an exemption from required disclosure of information related to the next of kin of deceased persons to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2068 by Betancourt relating to the tax administration for property tax protests and appeals to local government. Senate Bill 2069 by Zaffarini relating to the establishment of a work group to conduct a study on the feasibility of implementing an acute psychiatric bed registry to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2070 by Zaffarini relating to court administration, including the term of a local administrative judge, court administration training, and the compensation of certain administrative judges to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 2071 by Zaffarini relating to the regulation of child care facilities to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2072 by Zaffarini relating to the establishment of a paid parental leave program administered by the Texas Workforce Commission to Economic Development. Senate Bill 2073 by Zaffarini relating to the authority of an appraisal district to purchase, finance the purchase of, or lease real property or construct or finance the construction of improvements to real property to local government. Senate Bill 2074 by Zaffarini relating to a study of the four coincident peak program by the Public Utility Commission of Texas to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 2075 by Zaffarini relating to the establishment, powers and duties, terms, and governance of certain advisory bodies for programs administered by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 2076 by Creighton relating to the view of the state capitol to economic development. Senate Bill 2077 by Zaffarini relating to the Board of Directors of the Texas Mutual Insurance Company to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 2078 by Colkhorst relating to the regulation of composting facilities by certain counties to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 2079 by Betancourt relating to certain actions for personal injury that arise out of a sexual offense against a child or disabled individual to State Affairs. Senate Bill 2080 by Alvarado relating to the records management and taxation of navigation districts and certain port and harbor facilities of transportation. Senate Bill 2081 by Miles relating to the eligibility of municipal solid waste personnel for the Homes for Texas Heroes Home Loan Program to local government. Senate Bill 2082 by Miles relating to the operation of a concrete crushing facility near a hospital to natural resources. Senate Bill 2083 by Miles relating to the creation of additional county civil court at law in Harris County to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 2084 by Miles relating to the financing of certain grocery stores by a public facility corporation to local government. Senate Bill 2085 by Miles relating to prohibiting the denial of a driver's license renewal for failure to appear in court to State Affairs. Senate Bill 2086 by Miles relating to job interview restrictions for releasees from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to criminal justice. Senate Bill 2087 by Miles relating to the content of biennial legislative immunization reports issued by the Department of State Health Services to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2088 by Miles relating to the provision of counseling services by certain providers under Medicaid and reimbursement for those services to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2089 by Miles relating to the Rita Littlefield Chronic Kidney Disease Centralized Resource Center to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2090 by Hughes relating to the authority of certain municipalities to receive certain tax revenue derived from Hotel and Convention Center project to economic development. Senate Bill 2091 by Zaffarini relating to a study on effective case management practices and procedures for courts and guardianship proceedings to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 2092 by Cook relating to establishing a highway construction mitigation program for certain highway construction projects to transportation. Senate Bill 2093 by Cook relating to expedited credentialing of certain federally qualified health center providers by managed care plan issuers to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2094 by Cook relating to the establishment of a higher education plan for human papillomavirus education and prevention to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2095 by Cook relating to the confidentiality of certain home address information and property tax appraisal records to Business and Commerce. Senate Bill 2096 by Cook relating to the time period for conducting a pretrial hearing after a criminal defendant has been restored to competency to criminal justice. Senate Bill 2097 by Hughes relating to tuition and fee exemptions at public institutions of higher education for certain peace officers to education K through 16. Senate Bill 2098 by Hughes relating to requirements for courses in the core curriculum adopted by public institutions of higher education to education K through 16. Senate Bill 2099 by Hughes relating to the definition of a cottage food production operation to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2100 by Hughes relating to public use of audio and visual materials produced by the legislative branch to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2101 by Hughes relating to the prohibition of access by minors to sexually explicit materials in municipal public library collections to state affairs. Senate Bill 2102 by Campbell relating to certain energy efficiency performance standards for residential construction to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2103 by Zaffarini relating to boil water notices issued by public drinking water supply systems to water, agriculture, and rural affairs. Senate Bill 2104 by Blanco relating to the prohibition of military status discrimination to veteran affairs. Senate Bill 2105 by Blanco relating to the authority of a county attorney or district attorney to enforce human trafficking awareness and prevention in commercial lodging establishments to criminal justice. Senate Bill 2106 by Creighton relating to the creation of the Texas Commission on Teacher Job Satisfaction and Retention to education K through 16. Senate Bill 2107 by Creighton relating to a pilot program for outcomes-based contracts at public schools to education K through 16. Senate Bill 2108 by Hughes relating to the inclusion of direct primary care fees as qualified medical expenses applied toward insurance deductibles and certain state health benefit plans to finance. Senate Bill 2109 by Hughes relating to the appointment of deputy constables to local government. Senate Bill 2110 by Betancourt et al. Relating to electric grid resiliency measures to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2111 by Zaffarini relating to legal representation of indigent persons in this state and to proceedings before a magistrate, including the appointment of counsel for indigent defendants to criminal justice. Senate Bill 2112 by Colcourse relating to the punishment for certain criminal offenses related to cultivated oyster, mariculture, to water, agricultural, and rural affairs. Senate Bill 2113 by Hughes relating to a special right of access under the public information law for a member of a governing board to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2114 by Hughes relating to the removal of certain proposed reservoir sites from the state water plan to water, agriculture, and rural affairs. Senate Bill 2115 by Hughes relating to the eligibility of certain engineering firms to participate in the construction of a reservoir to water, agriculture, and rural affairs. By 2116 by Parker and Hagenbu relating to the critical designation of certain natural gas facilities to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2117 by Parker et al. Relating to the establishment of the Texas Committee on Foreign Investment to review certain transactions involving certain foreign entities to state affairs. Senate Bill 2118 by Parker relating to the composition and authority of certain sub-regional boards of regional transportation authorities to transportation. Senate Bill 2119 by Sparks relating to an exemption from certain immunization requirements for medical and veterinary students to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2120 by Johnson relating to the Task Force on Eating Disorders Prevalence to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2121 by Johnson relating to the regulation of certain business entities that act as data brokers to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2122 by Zaffarini relating to imposition of applicant fees for certain permits and permit amendments for the disposal of oil and gas waste to natural resources. Senate Bill 2123 by Zaffarini relating to the authority of the Texas Water Development Board to provide financial assistance to certain counties for brackish water desalination to water, agriculture, and rural affairs. Senate Bill 2124 by Zaffarini relating to the publication of the Texas Groundwater Protection Committee's annual report to water, agricultural, and rural affairs. Senate Bill 2125 by Zaffarini relating to a study to review the animal-friendly account to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2126 by Johnson relating to the offense of passing certain vehicles on a highway to transportation. Senate Bill 2127 by Zaffarini relating to the assignment of certain retired and former justices and judges to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 2128 by Campbell relating to the licensing and regulation of anesthesiologist assistants to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2129 by Johnson relating to the operation of vehicles at railroad grade crossings to transportation. Senate Bill 2130 by Hinojosa of Hidalgo relating to the regulation of certain transactions and activities involving the provision of veterinary services to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2131 by Hinojosa of Hidalgo relating to funds reserved for certain construction materials to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2132 by Hinojosa of Hidalgo relating to the Rural Pathway Excellence Partnership to Education K through 16. Senate Bill 2133 by Hinojosa of Hidalgo relating to the authority of certain municipalities to use certain tax revenue for hotel and convention center projects to economic development. Senate Bill 2134 by Hinojosa of Hidalgo relating to the authority of certain municipalities to use certain tax revenue for certain qualified projects to economic development. Senate Bill 2135 by Hinojosa relating to the creation of an additional county court at law and an additional statutory probate court in Hidalgo County to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 2136 by Hinojosa of Hidalgo relating to dual certification for water or sewer service in an area incorporated or annexed by certain municipalities to water, agriculture, and rural affairs. Senate Bill 2137 by Menendez relating to the allocation of low-income housing tax credits to local government. Senate Bill 2138 by Creighton relating to prohibiting the investment of the Permanent University Fund the Texas University Fund, or money held by a public institution of higher education and financial companies that boycott certain energy companies to education K through 16. Senate Bill 2139 by King, relating the authority of the Texas Military Department to negotiate the release of reversionary interest and certain other interests of the state in certain property in Palo Pinto County to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2140 by Huffman, relating to certain tobacco products for purposes of the cigars and tobacco products tax to finance. Senate Bill 2141 by Zaffarini, relating to issuance of specialty license plates for state and federal judges to transportation. Senate Bill 2142 by Perry, relating to the creation of the consumable hemp products account in the General Revenue Fund to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 2143 by Perry, relating the authority of a county to commission certain individuals as peace officers and establish certain law enforcement agencies to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 2144 by Perry, relating the authority of a reserve peace officer to criminal justice. Senate Bill 2145 by Perry, relating the authority of the advisory body of a public improvement district and the board of directors of a reinvestment zone to hold a meeting by telecommunication device to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2146 by Huffman, relating the information reported by prosecuting attorneys to the Texas Judicial Council to criminal justice. Senate Bill 2147 by Hall, relating to the ownership of breeder deer in this state to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 2148 by Hall, relating the reliability of the electricity supply chain to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2149 by Betancourt, King, and Creighton, relating to the implementation of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives by providers of electric services to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2150 by Betancourt, relating to coordination between teaching hospitals and medical schools regarding student field-based experience placements to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2151 by Betancourt, relating to countywide polling places to state affairs. Senate Bill 2152 by Betancourt, relating to third-party software providers' ability to manage certain users' social media accounts to state affairs. Senate Bill 2153 by Betancourt, relating to the membership of and qualifications for the Texas Lottery Commission to state affairs. Senate Bill 2154 by Schwartner, relating to the regulation of a delivery network companies to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2155 by Perry, relating to the regulation of veterinary professionals to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 2156 by Eckhart, relating to firearm liability insurance for certain firearm owners to state affairs. Senate Bill 2157 by Eckhart, relating to deposits of funds in a court registry by a clerk of a justice court to local government. Senate Bill 2158 by Flores, relating to taxes imposed on Venice liquor to state affairs. Senate Bill 2159 by Flores, relating to aquifer storage and recovery projects that transect portion of the Edwards Aquifer to Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 2160 by Flores, relating to the jurisdiction of the Public Utility Commission of Texas over municipally owned utility water and sewer service outside the corporate limits of a municipality to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 2161 by Flores, relating to expenses incurred in the appeal of rates for water or sewer service charged to certain customers to Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs. Senate Bill 2162 by Flores, relating to the public retirement systems for employees of certain municipalities to finance. Senate Bill 2163 by Parker, relating to measures to assist students enrolled at public institutions of higher education who are homeless or who were in foster care to education K through 16. Senate Bill 2164 by Parker and Blanco, relating to employer incentive payments for child care for employees to finance. Senate Bill 2165 by Parker, relating to prohibiting the dismissal of certain suits affecting the parent-child relationship involving the Department of Family and Protective Services to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 2166 by Parker, relating to testing of voting tabulation equipment to state affairs. Senate Bill 2167 by Paxton, relating to the licensing and regulation of massage therapy to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2168 by Paxton, relating to the eligibility of land for appraisal for ad valorem tax purposes as qualified open space land to local government. Senate Bill 2169 by Menendez, relating to personal leave for wellness provided for school district employees to education K through 16. Senate Bill 2170 by Hall, relating to the exemption from ad valorem taxation of property of a charitable organization that provides financial support for medical care at certain institutions of higher education to local government. Senate Bill 2171 by Parker, relating to public schools grievance procedure to education K through 16. Senate Bill 2172 by Parker, relating to the authority of the chief appraiser of an appraisal district to require a person allowed an exemption from ad valorem taxation of a resident's homestead to file a new application to local government. Senate Bill 2173 by Parker, relating to the effect of a tax certificate accompanying a transfer of certain property to local government. Senate Bill 2174 by Parker, relating to reporting and auditing requirements for digital asset service providers to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2175 by Parker relating to the prosecution of the criminal offenses of prohibited barratry and solicitation of professional employment to jurisprudence. Senate Bill 2176 by Parker relating to the establishment of the Texas Cyber Command as a component institution of the University of Texas system to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2177 by Hagenbu relating to the creation of a grant program to assist local law enforcement agencies in solving violent and sexual offenses to criminal justice. Senate Bill 2178 by Hagenbu relating to a restriction on the authority of a state agency to spend appropriated money to provide financial support to certain organizations and events to finance. Senate Bill 2179 by Hagenbu relating to the termination of a lease agreement of a service member's dependent to Veteran Affairs. Senate Bill 2180 by Hagenbu and Flores relating to requiring a certification for peace officers to conduct certain polygraph examinations to criminal justice. Senate Bill 2181 by Hagenbu relating to the regulation of certain health professionals to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2182 by Hall relating to a franchise tax credit for taxable entities that employ certain apprentices in broadband utility engineering to finance. Senate Bill 2183 by Hinojosa of Nueces relating to the periods during which a retail fireworks permit holder may sell fireworks to the public to local government. Senate Bill 2184 by Hinojosa of Nueces relating to the required age for a license or permit relating to the conduct of public fireworks display to business and commerce. Senate Bill 2185 by Hinojosa of Nueces relating to bilingual education allotment under the public school finance system to education K through 16. Senate Bill 2186 by Hinojosa of Nueces relating to compensatory time off for certain state employees to criminal justice. Senate Bill 2187 by Hinojosa of Nueces relating to the administration of assessment instruments to public school students to education K through 16. Senate Bill 2189 by Hinojosa of Nueces relating to the rate of the hotel occupancy tax in certain municipalities and the use of certain revenue from that tax by those municipalities to economic development. Senate Bill 2190 by King relating to the grant program for nonprofit organizations supporting the Department of Public Safety to finance. Senate Bill 2191 by Huffman relating to the creation and recreation of funds and accounts, the dedication and rededication of revenue and allocation of accrued interest on dedicated revenue, and the exemption of unappropriated money from use for general governmental purposes to finance. Senate Bill 2192 by Huffman relating to state fiscal matters to finance. Senate Bill 2193 by Huffman relating to directing payment after approval of certain miscellaneous claims and judgments against the state to finance. Senate Bill 2194 by Paxton relating to an early childhood integrated data system to Health and Human Services. Senate Bill 2195 by Johnson relating to the reporting of certain orders and convictions to the Department of Public Safety and Federal Bureau of Investigation for use with the National Instant Crime Background Check System to State Affairs. Senate Bill 2196 by Johnson relating to the period during which an order for emergency protection remains in effect to criminal justice. Senate Bill 2197 by Johnson relating to the filing fee for nomination by convention to State Affairs. Senate Bill 2199 by Birdwell relating to increasing the criminal penalty for loading certain overweight vehicles transporting hazardous materials at a weight that exceeds the weight limitations authorized for the vehicle to border security. Senate Bill 2200 by Birdwell relating to the creation of a criminal offense for operating or moving an overweight vehicle transporting hazardous materials on a route other than the designated permit route to border security. Senate Bill 2392 by King relating to notice to local law enforcement of certain offenses occurring on public or private school property or at school-sponsored or school-related activities to education K through 16.
Pursuant to the motion previously adopted, the Senate stands in recess until 11 a.m. tomorrow.